We have a major development coming out of this year's WWE Money in the Bank PLE. John Cena made a surprise appearance tonight on the show, right in the middle of the show. And when he came out, he looked a little bit different. His gear was still largely the same, but what was written on the gear was quite different than what we're used to seeing. It was saying stuff like, "Last time is now. After this, you can't see me." And on the front of his shirt, it said John Cena Retirement Tour 2025. John Cena comes out in Toronto to a huge ovation, warm welcome, and he immediately announces to the crowd that he is retiring from WWE. But he's not retiring right there in Toronto in the middle of the ring and Money in the Bank. He is going to be retiring the following year. And according to John, they have big plans for his run in 2025. And he said he's going to wrestle at the Royal Rumble for the final time. I'm going to wrestle at the Elimination Chamber for the final time. And I'm going to wrestle at WrestleMania for the final time. And he also said, I'm going to wrestle in Toronto for the final time. So that implied that Cena's run is going to go well beyond WrestleMania. And we speculated during his promo that it sounded like he's going to work for a year. And he said in this speech that he would be on the press conference after the pay-per-view, which he was, and he did announce that his run is going to be from January to December of 2025. Now, I have not seen the whole thing, but he did make that announcement, and it sounds like we're going to get a good, healthy, one-year run by Cena, culminating, I guess, with a retirement match at the end of the year. I don't know when, or what show that will be on, or what city it will be in, or who his opponent will be. I have an idea of who his opponent will be. I think I know who it should be. It should be the man that straight up asked him for a match right in the entranceway a few months back, or maybe a year ago, whenever it was now. Cody Rhodes shaking John Cena's hand, and "I want a match with you." And Cena goes, "I don't know." I mean, if there's ever a time to legitimately pass a torch, you would think this would be the perfect time. Here, this is your torch now. I'm giving it to you. Take it and run. Where a lot of torch passings in the past really haven't been torch passings. But John Cena was a pretty emotional promo in the ring, and it was emotional watching him. For those of you who have watched my channel for a long time, one of the founding hardcore hills that I died on this channel was my very aggressive defense of John Cena. And I never wanted to play in or participate in the typical opinions and anger and rage that wrestling fans had towards John Cena. The biggest difference between myself and them was just the age gap. By the time John Cena came around, I had already experienced a lot of wrestling. I was in my mid-20s for the Attitude Era. I grew up in the rock and wrestling era. I got everything I needed as a kid and as a young adult from wrestling. So by the time John Cena came around, his Fruity Pebble act didn't really bother me that bad. I liked seeing little kids happy. Now, John Cena had glaring issues with his booking. There were plenty of times when John Cena would Super Cena himself into victories, and sometimes it got a little bit redundant and a little bit ridiculous, and I understand that, and fans had very valid gripes and valid criticisms of John Cena's push and his use, but they don't know how to manage or articulate those frustrations. They turn it into Cena's ruining the business. The WWE is going to go out of business in 5 years if they keep pushing him. He should die. John Cena is a cancer. I know he ain't no Eddie Guerrero or Bret Hart, but I still very, very much respect what Cena brings. Cena isn't doing this for me. I am not his core audience. Most of the people complaining about him weren't his core audience either. And so I just refused to partake in what everybody else was doing. I've refused to be a sheep. And I got accused of accepting mediocrity. I'm like, no, bitch. It has nothing to do with accepting mediocrity. It has everything to do with me realizing what kind of a professional Cena is, what kind of a wrestler and character he is, and how he was there at the right time when WWE needed him. The biggest reason Cena got as corny and lame as he did was because of Chris Benoit. When Benoit committed those acts and we had that big tragedy, double murder suicide, WWE was under the gun. They were on the hot seat, the roid rage and the wrestler deaths and the underbelly of wrestling. And WWE had to go full PG there for a while and just try to put forth a wholesome or as wholesome image as they can. And I understood that business strategy. So I didn't really get too upset. But John Cena was never my favorite. And I even grew frustrated with him at times, but I never had an irrational opinion of him. I never allowed my frustration at WWE's booking to overtake critical thought. And I was adamantly against anybody that was just slobbering, drooling mad about it. And I wouldn't say stood by John Cena, but I stood by my beliefs that he is not the Antichrist that these fans make him out to be. And I never once deviated from that opinion. I stood my ground and I still stand by everything I said about the guy. And when he was out there making that speech tonight, I felt as validated as ever because I was the one lecturing fans years ago, a decade ago. I was saying, y'all are going to be embarrassed and you're going to feel bad about all the stupid fucking shit you said about this guy, all this crazy, insane hatred that you had simply because you can't control the emotions inside your body. And at the time, he really was the best guy to carry the WWE's flag during a time period when they needed someone like that. So I always respected what John brought. I always respected what he gave. And I most importantly respected his work ethic. And for the fans that said, oh, he can't wrestle, he can't do this, he's the worst in the ring. I don't know how a guy who can't wrestle gets nominated for Match of the Year every year, and he's won a few of them. He has worked with all different shapes and sizes, and he's had awesome matches. You know, fans look at John Cena and are just going to automatically compare him to the Angles and the Eddies and the Bretts. Don't do that. He's nothing like those guys. Don't compare him to them because he's not like them. He's different. And his matches are good for different reasons that their matches were good. I've grown to appreciate his work even more now than I did before. But when he was on top and when he was at his strongest, even I was largely turned off by the product. So I'm not saying the fans were wrong for Cena not being their guy. I'm saying they're wrong for calling him cancer, wishing him death, and being stupid enough to believe that the WWE would go out of business if he was their champion. He was a great character to have. Wasn't for everybody, but he wasn't the business killer that everybody thought he was going to be and everybody insisted he was going to be because he can't work and he doesn't have good work rate. Go fuck off. You can't even spell work rate, much less understand what the fuck it is. So I just refused to play into that bullshit, and I refused to take any of that bullshit from any of those fans either. I used to argue with them a lot too. You're dumb, good mic work. You're just a John Cena cocksucker. I'm like, that's the best you got? You got no other arguments and you're just a John Cena cocksucker? Real mature, and I had to deal with that all the time. Why? Because I said Cena wasn't as bad as they thought. That's it. I wasn't even disagreeing that WWE pushed him a little bit ridiculously sometimes. I fully admitted that. I'm not blind. I can see what they're doing. I was just pushing back on the vile hatred because I don't think that's very healthy for the business or for wrestling fans. That was my major point back then. And so I've always had kind of this connection to Cena through the channel all the years that, you know, I kind of went to bat for him type of thing. And then when he started to be phased out, and I'd say this was probably around like 2017, he won the title. He dropped it to AJ, I think. And you guys can tell me when the last time he won the championship. I don't even remember what year it was. But once he started kind of being phased out, taking some movie deals, not being on TV all the time, I felt like it was almost instant. Like when he was gone, fans, they just needed him to be gone. They just needed him to be gone and not to be on TV winning all the fucking time. And once the Super Cena days were over, you did see a lot of fans kind of turning the corner on him a little bit. I had people coming to me on the channel. Good mic work. I admit I was a little hard on Cena. I appreciate him now. I respect him a lot more. That's because he isn't shoved down your throat anymore. And now you can look at things with a little bit clearer judgment, you know what I mean? And I was happy to hear that. And I have seen this in the last several years, Cena being around. Even when he comes back, the fans aren't freaking out or, you know, screaming at him, get the fuck out of here, we hate you. He doesn't bother them anymore because he's not on TV in 5 different segments on Monday Night Raw, winning every single week, you know, having 14-month-long title runs and all that shit that he did back in the day. Those days are gone, so the fans have kind of lightened up on it a little bit. Then they transferred all their hate to Roman Reigns, and then he turned heel. Now they don't know who to hate, but Cena, you know, absorbed a lot of it back in the day. And now that he's finally wrapping things up next year, I think his career is going to go down as one of the more interesting ones. And he was a champion at a real interesting time in WWE, coming in right after the Attitude Era, and then working in the, you know, the 2000s and the 2010s, and a very interesting time in the business, very boring time a lot of those years too, but he was at the top of his game. He won a lot of championships, and he had some memorable matches. His matches with AJ Styles, his matches with Umaga, with JBL. He's with Shawn Michaels, with Triple H. You know, he's worked with everybody and had classics with so many and so many great rivalries. And I think he will go down as like a statue guy in WWE history. When you think about the big champions of specific eras, John Cena is a big part, you know, of the last 15 to 20 years in WWE, and he deserves a send-off like no other. I think this is WWE's opportunity to do a retirement better than what they did for Ric Flair. Think about that retirement Ric Flair got in 2008. I hope John Cena's retirement exceeds that, because one cool thing about John, he's not going to make a fucking ass of himself for the next 20 years of his life and make WWE regret the great retirement that they gave to him. I think John Cena will do right by his retirement. Now, my biggest question is, there are no such thing or things as retirements in wrestling. We know that. And I always believe that if John Cena was physically capable, there's a potential for him to come back to the ring for the next 10 years. Who's to say at WrestleMania 45 or WrestleMania 50, they don't phone up a 55-year-old John Cena? I mean, Austin came back. Hey, why don't you come work a WrestleMania throwback match, attraction match, or something like that for old time's sake? And he does it. So who's to say at the end of 2025, this is actually his final match? This is actually his retirement. And like I said, I think the perfect opponent for him would be Cody Rhodes. Who else could he work with throughout the year? Randy Orton, rekindle that rivalry maybe. CM Punk, another CM Punk match. Maybe another AJ match. Or maybe he wants to work with guys he hasn't worked with yet. And also, he's what? A title away from breaking Ric Flair's title record? If he's coming back for a year, there's plenty of time for him to win that championship. And I've been saying that before John Cena retires, I expected him to win one more championship. And maybe he wins the World Heavyweight title on Raw. That's a belt he hasn't held. He never held the Universal, and that belt doesn't even exist anymore. So maybe he goes after the World Heavyweight title and adds one final championship to his legacy before officially retiring. And he could do that by winning the Royal Rumble, or he could win a championship match some other way. Maybe he wins Money in the Bank next year and cashes in on the World Heavyweight Champion. Who knows? But by the time he comes to his retirement match, I really think that person, that opponent, should be Cody Rhodes. And I think that would be a nice moment if Cena can get a big send-off, leave the memories alone, that whole thing. It would be great. It would be great. So I'm excited to see what they have planned. Cena alluded in his promo tonight that they have a lot of plans and they plan on giving the fans something special. And I, for one, hope John Cena has a great 2025. I hope he stays healthy. I hope he has some memorable matches. I hope he wins the championship again. And I hope he has a retirement that not only satisfies him, but satisfies the fans. And it gives us one of our first real actual retirement closures in wrestling, because everybody comes back. Closest guy to do it was Shawn, and even he came back with a bald head. With Cena, I'm excited to see what they do, and I think that Triple H and the WWE handling his retirement run instead of Vince McMahon is going to bode well for John Cena, and he should do some memorable stuff, and I really hope that John Cena can go out with a bang, have a memorable retirement, and one where, you see all the fans that once shit on him, the fans that once called him a cancer and had so much vile and repugnant hatred to fling his way, have a tear in their eye when he retires. I believe that they will. I've maintained that for over 10 years on this channel, that the fans that hated him with passion will cry when he retires. And I believe that will be the case. And don't forget, he's going to have a Hall of Fame induction too. So WrestleMania, what, in 2026? Maybe that's it. If he retires in December of 2025, you would think he's the headliner for that year's WrestleMania, wouldn't you think? But regardless of what happens or what the plans are, I just want to wish John Cena all the best, good luck, and I cannot wait to watch this unfold with you guys next year. Should be a lot of fun. So big news coming out of Money in the Bank tonight. John Cena will be calling it a career in about 18 months. Pretty wild. Peace.